Howdy, howdy. We are live on a Friday night, and it is a bit of a special occasion on the Starship Texas. We are breaking out a brand new format with our backtrekking retrospectives, but I think this is going to be a lot of fun. We have a fun episode to talk about, and we have a fun guest, Brandy, with us.
Hi.
And I see we already have some people in the chat ready to go, so we can go ahead and get the show started. I'm Fathery.
I'm Miss Taylor.
I'm Brandy.
And this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
Welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 320th installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, the home of Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we take a deep look at Star Trek, old and new. And tonight we are talking about Star Trek, the original series, Season 3, Episode 6, because I'm going in production order, not air date order, but that's Spock's Brain, written by Lee Cronin, which is actually the fake pen name of one Gene L. Kuhn, although I should say this episode was heavily revised by Fred Freiberger, and directed by Marc Daniels. So Spock's Brain, often referred to as the worst episode of Star Trek, or at least the worst of the original series. Is it really, though? That's what we're going to be talking about in just a moment. But to let y'all know, this is the first show we're doing in this new format we're calling Backtrekking Retrospectives, where the plan is most of these will be me, Taylor, and one other person. We're lucky enough tonight to have the wonderful Branda Jackola with us. Hi, Brandy.
Hello. Happy to be here talking about Spock.
But yeah, we're going to do Spock's Brain tonight, and then in next week we have a different episode from Legacy Star Trek lined up to go. I will announce what it is at the end of the show, but just to let people know that Dave will return to the show next week for that episode. So we'll have Dave back next week. And stay tuned to the end, and I'll let you know what episode we're talking about. But before we get into Spock's Brain, just a little bit of quick housekeeping. I want to give a big thank you and shout out to the wonderful Tex-Trek Patreon supporters who make the weekly show possible. We couldn't do it without you. Starfleet So Hell, Cake is Eternal, Crazy Dutchie, Joanne Robertson, John Dot, Geek Filter, Quarks Bar, Stephanie Durantes, Matthew Averett, Braxton, Chuck A, Joel Vallis, Ben Ginium, Arthur Lamoureux, our associate producer Chris Garris, Dave Farabee, Dave A. Gregory, and our anonymous supporters. And we like to hang out with our patrons at least once a month and have a Patreon watch party in the Tex-Trek Discord. We have one planned for a couple of weeks, Saturday, March 22nd at 3:30 p.m. Central. We are going to be watching an animated Star Trek double feature. We're going to do an episode of the animated series, The Eye of the Beholder. It's the one where Kirk, Spock, and McCoy go to like the slug alien zoo, and they're like trapped there, kind of like the menagerie or the cage, you know. But they have like giant slug people, and it's cool because it's 70s cartoon format. And we're going to follow that up with an episode of Prodigy, some modern animation, Let Sleeping Borg Lie, where they find the dormant Borg cube that may or may not also be the artifact from Picard Season 1. So that'll be a lot of fun, and that's open to all of our patrons to attend on March 22nd. You can join the Tex-Trek Patreon as little as $2 a month. That will get you into the watch parties. And if you can afford to be more generous, there are some additional perks as well. But looking forward to watching those. I like animated Star Trek. But there was also like a little bit of news this week I want to talk about with the two of y'all before we get into Spock's brain. The big news is Star Trek Strange New World Season 4 started shooting a few days ago, so still waiting on Season 3. Still waiting to see what happens with that Gorn cliffhanger. Brandy, I remember you were so excited. They're like, oh, look, they did the best of both world things and did like a cliffhanger. Now we have to wait till after this strike to... I'm kidding. I remember you were actually kind of mad about that, right? Do I recall that correctly?
Furious. Furious is a better word, because I have never been a fan of the end of season cliffhangers. I think it's a overused trope. I think it's very dissatisfying. I think that if you can't count on us to come back and watch the season premiere without doing that, you are making us look stupid. Okay? So don't do that again. Besides, we all know how this is going to turn out when it gets back. Because what can they do? All they can do is run. That is the only choice they have, is run. So, there we are. You heard it here first, folks.
I don't know who's going to die in that episode, but I think there's no way it's going to be Captain Patel, because they just teased that too much. Mm-hmm. And they gave her a character poster. They released those character posters this week.
Why would they do that if they kill her off in the season, not season finale, season premiere?
But I do think we will get probably a trailer and a season 3 release date announcement very soon. I'm thinking it will be May or June when it will actually premiere. And then we can have Strange New Worlds in the summer, and then in the winter we'll get Starfleet Academy, like probably in January or February. So
hopefully. Well, May would be fine with me. That's when my birthday is, so.
So maybe for your birthday, Paramount Plus will deliver us that third season.
That would be lovely.
And speaking of Taylor's birthday in April, we're getting a gift. Well, some people might consider it a gift, depending on how you felt about the Section 31 made for streaming movie. There is a release date for the Blu-ray. It's coming April 29th.
Nice.
So
I like to have them all on Blu-ray.
Yeah, I'll definitely be buying that, and it's going to be in 4K Blu-ray too, so it'll look great. And speaking of the merch, Brandy, did you see the nacelle toys that they're now available for pre-order? But they first announced these a while back, but they're that company Nacelle, they're doing the really deep cut selections of characters with the toys. They have with like dead nephew Preston from the Wrath of Khan, Rachel Garrett, green shirt Archer, like Boimler had a toy of.
Yep.
Jellicoe that includes the Livingston fish tank. So these are so fun.
I love this idea, and I'm so happy they're actually doing it, because a lot of times people will aim to do something and they'll maybe even make announcements and then it never comes to fruition. But it sure looks like this is going to be a thing, and I am here for it, because dead nephew from Wrath of Khan 2, I remember seeing that actor when I was a child, like even younger than Wrath of Khan, in Escape to Witch Mountain and Return to Witch Mountain.
Oh, I forgot that he's also in that.
Yeah. So I was just like, hey, it's that guy from Escape to Witch Mountain. So, yeah, I'm a weirdo for noticing things like that.
But now you can get a toy of him.
Now I can! Never has there been a toy for this guy that I'm aware of, so yay!
And the other fun thing is that on the Nacelle website, you can submit suggestions of who... So, I think we all need to write in Cybok. We need, like, some Cybok toys.
Yes, please. Yes, please. Let's do that.
So be sure to go check that out and suggest that they give us a Cybok or any other cool suggestions out there. There's so many fun Star Trek characters it'd be fun to own an action figure of. So I think that was a fun idea to go with these weird kind of off the wall deep cuts like that. Wei Yun, and he's included with the pizza and chopsticks. Like,
I've always wanted a tiny Jeffrey Combs. Oh my god.
Now they need to do Brunt and Shran also.
Right.
I don't know if I need any other ones, but definitely those are like the big three.
Yeah, well, because that other one was only like a one-off when he was playing this guy that wanted to have a holographic scan of Kira.
Yeah, he
That
wanted deep fake porn, basically.
yes, yes, that's exactly what he wanted. That's exactly what he wanted. Except, holodeck, so it's interactive.
Yeah, so we can do without a figure of that guy, but the other ones all sound fun. But let's get into some Spock's brain. I'm gonna quickly recap the episode by reading the synopsis I grabbed off of Memory Alpha, and then I'll kind of expand on it with some spoilers just to recap it for people. But the synopsis for Spock's brain reads: An alien woman invades the Enterprise and steals Spock's brain. Kirk, McCoy, and a landing party beam down to a planet in a desperate race to retrieve it. And yeah, they basically have 24 hours left to get this boy's brain back in his noggin. And they beam down with a remote control Spock that is somehow conveniently rigged up off screen by Scotty and McCoy. And on this planet, they find that the men are all cavemen who live in the Ice Age upstairs, and then down under the surface, they have the women, the I-Morg, as opposed to the Morg cavemen. And they find Spock's brain has been stolen and set up as the computer to run this underground facility, and they're basically like, no, you can't have this, we're taking it back. And I guess we don't really get much of resolution at the end, but I guess it's implied, I guess, that the Morg and I-Morg will learn to like reintegrate society. But yeah, that's Spock's brain in a nutshell. Just before we get into the specifics in the episode breakdown, I'd like to ask both of y'all your broad thoughts on the episode. So, Brandy, why don't you go first and give us the first of our three opening statements and just tell us your broad takeaway on Spock's brain, how you feel about it.
I think that it is hated too much, and it's a better episode than people would like to think it is. I actually really enjoy most of the episode, and there is a lot of drama going on. There is some melodrama going on as well, Shatner. And but on the whole, it's an interesting story. Yes, there are plot holes, but that's typical of anything in that time, especially when it comes to science fiction. You just magic it all away by saying this or that, or not even saying anything. So I actually enjoy this episode, even though we don't get a lot of Spock in his actual body. And one of the things that I find absolutely hilarious is the clicking noise that Spock's body makes when McCoy is making him move around with the remote control. I'm like, what is the clicking noise? And why did you put him in a jumpsuit? What was the point of that? Just leave him in his uniform.
Yeah, who took his clothes off? Who got him dressed in a new outfit?
Yeah, he looks like a waste servant, waste removal servant for the city. It's like, what?
It was probably Chapel. She's like, I volunteer to change his clothes.
Yep, that tracks. I will accept that.
At least that's in the line of duty. That's better than like drugging him in Mud's passions. But
oh yeah. Mm.
But I agree with you a lot, Brandy. I think this episode is not necessarily the worst episode of the original series, and it is kind of unfairly written off as being, terrible or unwatchable. But a big part of my enjoyment of the episode comes from how unintentionally funny it is. But even if it is by accident, like if you just take like a kind of a death of the author approach to this and just kind of view it like, well, how does the final product play out? It works as a comedy. It is so over the top, and these actors are trying so hard. They're like acting their asses off trying to sell some of this ridiculous stuff, and it's just wildly entertaining to me. And the episode starts off, very, very creepy. It's almost kind of like a horror movie with someone coming and like snatching your organs. It's almost kind of like the Vidians in Voyager. But then there's a certain point, and as we go through the plot in the episode breakdown, I'll point out when I think we get there. But there's a certain point where I think it just kind of turns on a dime and goes from kind of a serious high stakes mystery and horror type vibe to being just like kind of a full on comedy. But Taylor, what about you? What's your opening statement for Spock's brain?
Well, I was very fortunate that when I watched this episode for the first time, you gave me like a warning.
The disclaimer,
yeah. It. Yeah, and you were like, "This one is like notoriously bad," and I was like, "Okay, bad like bad or bad like funny?" And you're just like, "We'll just watch it." And I think that actually made me more open-minded and able to like enjoy this episode more on my first watch. I thought that, I still think that the acting is incredible in this episode for what it is. Like, I love the commitment, especially with Shatner and with DeForest. And also with Scotty, just amazing like acting, even just like the little bit of facial expressions like in the background and stuff. Like they're committed to this episode, and I love that so much. And I love the fun sets and the colors in this episode. Like it looks like a really fun set, and like I don't know, it would have been a fun acting day, I think, on a lot of these sets. Like they're just so interesting and very TOS, And I think there's a lot in this episode that also works really well. I think there's some really great teamwork. And even though there's like goofy and bad moments, I think it's really fun. And it's fun to watch, but it's also fun to poke fun at it. So I really like this episode.
Yeah. I think what I told you going into it is that it is widely considered a bad episode, but yeah. Make your own judgment. But yeah, I did, when we were watching all of Star Trek for the first time, I did try to warn you when there was, some episodes that have a bit of a reputation, we'll say, but yeah, we can go ahead and move into our episode breakdown. So we'll just start off discussing the opening of the episode. We start off with a ship approaching the Enterprise that really impresses Scotty because it's an ion-powered ship, and for the YouTube audience watching this, I'm pulling some of these visuals of the original version. I know like the ship looks different in the remaster, but I have some images of that for later towards the end of the show. But that idea of like these ion powered ships, that's actually like a real scientific concept. That's something that like we have now is like ion thrusters in spacecrafts, but I guess being able to use that for faster than light travel is what really impressed Scotty. But like I was mentioning, the episode, it opens very serious and kind of scary with this mysterious woman who appears on the bridge and immediately knocks everyone out and closes in on Spock. And the next thing we know, we wake up and Spock's brain is gone. What do y'all think of that initial scene in sickbay when McCoy is explaining to Kirk, it was worse than dead, Jim. His brain is gone.
Who goes first?
I know, I was waiting. I was thinking you would go first.
Okay, that's fine. The whole opening bit is very interesting. I did watch the original episode. I didn't watch the one with the visual upgrades. So, and actually I do know what the new ship looks like, and I like the old one better. But the interesting thing about this woman is that when she first appears, she's got this kind of look on her face, and her eyes just kind of look dead.
Yeah.
It's just really good for this particular situation. Like, she's not really in there, in a way. And the smile that she has when she goes over and she's basically fondling Spock's head is creepy as hell.
Yeah, she had her eyes on the target. Like, she immediately, closed in on him. We were watching these... we watched this episode last night in the Tex-Trek Discord server, which people should join. There is a link wherever you are watching or listening to this to the Tex-Trek Discord server. But the plan with these backtracking retrospective shows that we're going to do, we're going to have group viewings of the episodes the night before on Thursdays. But when we were watching this, one of our regulars who's with us in the live audience now, Jill, pointed out that, she was immediately looking at Spock. So... and I never connected the dots to the Vidians before preparing for this show tonight. But when I was making my notes thinking about this is very similar to when we first encounter the Vidians in Voyager, and all of a sudden they, Neelix is missing his lungs. And it's like, what a creepy idea, then and here.
I agree. And I feel like when everyone on the bridge collapses, that everybody is really committed to that. It's like they all drop at the same time. Now that was really good.
Yeah, and then when it cuts back after the opening credits, they're in like the same positions. Shatner's in like that awkward position, laying in the chair with his ass sticking up in the air, and Decay sideways at the helm. But like they're able to like recreate. And they're doing like multiple takes of that. So good job with the continuity, guys.
Yeah, that's not easy to do with that many people on screen.
But still, like at this point in the story, it does still, to me, it comes off as like pretty serious and scary. It is like a little convenient that, Spock's Vulcan physiology allowed him to survive being brainless long enough for McCoy to put him on life support. And then also his Vulcan physiology requires them to get the brain back within 24 hours. But this isn't the first nor last Star Trek episode to, conveniently use Vulcan biology to do whatever is most convenient for the plot.
Well, I have to say, this is something that would only happen when Spock isn't able to hear it, but he said it was his incredible Vulcan physique. He'd never say that to Spock's face, ever.
Yeah, we do get some good Spock-McCoy dynamic stuff in this episode, especially at the end, but we can save that for later. But yeah, definitely, it's almost kind of like Star Trek 3, where McCoy is so much more, has so much more reverence towards Spock when he's out of the picture than when he's there, with him.
How typical.
Yeah, you can't let him know that he likes him.
But one thing that I think the original series was always really good at doing is that there's always kind of a sense of urgency. And part of that is kind of like that TOS 60s melodrama. But, there's so many episodes of other Star Trek shows where they kind of meander around. And with like the original series is always like, oh no, we have to like solve this quick. Like the clock is ticking. Come on, we only have 15 hours and 20 minutes left. Like, let's go. So I like that they again, also convenient that it's 24 hours. It just happens to be like a human day, but that's how long a Vulcan can live without a brain, I guess.
Bizarre. The 24-hour thing is kind of just like they just decided they had to make it really dramatic. 12 hours was too little. 36 was too much. So 24 it is.
Yeah,
right.
And everyone in the audience has a good sense of how long that is. So, luckily, Sulu picked up the ion trail to the Sigma Draconis system. So, y'all have any other thoughts on the opening before we talk about the Sigma Draconis system?
I was thinking it's kind of funny that Chapel is in a lot of those scenes in Medical Bay, but she says nothing the entire episode. So they kind of like pan to her, but then she's not saying anything. They just like have her reactions to things that are happening, but that's it. Yeah,
that is a good point. I was actually thinking of how there's so many, as bad as season 3 can be, there's a lot of rough episodes in season 3, but one of the good things about the season 3 is there's so many episodes that kind of have like all like big 7 TOS actors, like Walter Koenig is there, and George Takei is not off shooting the Green Berets, so James Doohan actually appears in every single episode, all 24 season 3 episodes, so they get a lot to do, and even in this episode, it's kind of, well balanced with the ensemble, at least by like TOS standards. But yeah, that didn't occur to me that Chapel is just seen and not heard in this one.
Yeah.
My
I
my guess
also
is so. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was also going to say I liked in this scene whenever McCoy tells Jim that his Spock's brain is missing. He goes his brain, but he like whispers it. I love that. Like, it's so cute. Like he's just like, it's so hilarious. It's kind
Yeah,
of like in that episode, the Tholian Web, where he's like saying Spock, but it's just his mouth.
It's just just
Yep.
like the muted Shatner.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the whole Nurse Chapel thing was they just didn't want to pay her to speak. And so when she can appear on screen but not speak, and she'll get paid even less than she would have.
Mm,
And I'm sure she wasn't paid enough to begin with.
definitely not.
Well, Majel missed out on the episode, but luckily Sulu and Chekhov are able to track the ion trail to the Sigma Draconis system, and then this is kind of fun. We have the decision that Kirk has to make: which of these 3 planets to land on to look for Spock. We only have enough time to check out one, but none of these seem like an obvious source of the ion-driven ship that was being used by the Brain Thief. So we have the 3rd planet is rated what Chekhov calls Class B on the industrial scale. And then I like how Kirk is like, oh yeah, that's like approximately Earth 1485. Like that's like a really specific year. And then the 4th planet, it's like that's letter G. So it's like, oh, 2030. So is it like, are these ratings, is it each one like a value of like 104 years or so of like human progress? Is that how it goes? Like A, B, C, D, E, F, G. But it seems like a little goofy, but I that aside, I love like the decision of like, okay, one of these planets is like 1400s, the other one is like 21st century, and the other one is like the Ice Age, but the Ice Age planet has like the weird pulsing energy that seems like it might be something man-made, something mechanical, like possibly the same technology as that ion-driven ship. But what do y'all think about this?
I really liked the banter, or not really the banter, but the debate in this scene. And I like that, Chekhov, Sulu, and Kirk are all kind of giving their reasons for each of the planets separately. And I think they're all like valid points. And I think it's interesting that, they're kind of like having to debate which one to go to. And I love that Uhura is there and she's just like, but why would they want Spock's brain? To kind of like re-point them like into, the problem. Like it feels like they get a little off track and she's like, but it's about Spock's brain.
Yeah.
And I think that's what brings Kirk back into being like, oh, this high energy, like pulsating thing is probably what we need to lean into. And I feel like that was just really well written. I think like I love seeing the teamwork there and how they were able to like debate and like have that conversation to figure out where they're going to go.
Yeah, and it kind of reiterates, like the scary mystery of like, this is really weird. Like, why would someone come and like steal, not only like steal a brain, but, McCoy described how like the surgery was like perfect, the way it was removed. What do you think, Brandy?
I also really like this scene. A captain's strength is with his crew, and he involves the crew in trying to figure out which planet they're going to. And yes, he makes the final decision, but he welcomes the input of everybody else. He wants ideas. And I appreciate that because there are so many captains that would just, make the decisions themselves, go off on their own. But I think that time for someone to paint up a slide. Yep. I think that they had a very intelligent debate over which one to do. I love Uhura chiming in there. That's probably why Chapel didn't get any lines, is because Uhura did. They're only going to pay one woman on the cast because they got all those other women that they have to pay now that are guest stars. So I think that it was, of course, I've seen this episode before, but it has been a while. And so I was just like, I think it was the ice planet. Wasn't it the ice planet? It's got to be the ice planet because it's the least obvious one, which is always also the murderer in every murder mystery. The least possible one. The person who seems to have no motive whatsoever is always going to be your killer.
Yeah, and that I guess it is a bit of a trope that kind of might add to the humor factor of watching this episode, because you're like, oh yeah, of course they're going to pick the the oddest one is going to be that's the most interesting one to be correct. So that's what the writers are going to go with. But just being able to use your familiar faces to have this conversation, it's very much something that like it almost feels more like a TNG type scene. I know like Star Trek had done this before, and like the first two pilots both have people sitting around a conference table trying to decide what to do and how to deal with a particular issue or quandary, but they didn't. That's kind of more of a staple of like TNG. It's like, okay, we're gonna have a team meeting, so. But that's part of why I think this episode, it does kind of show off the ensemble cast a bit more than a lot of TOS just really focuses on the big three, and this is like a bit more inclusive. They do end up making like Kirk the guy who like solves almost every problem, and like it always like comes down to, like he's the one who like tells Scotty to like, oh, see if you pick up anything on the communicator, to like that's how they discover Spock's voice, or like he's the one who like tells McCoy to like, we'll hook up Spock's mouth first later on. It's always Kirk. So I think that probably would have been like a little bit more preferable to like break that up to some of the other characters a little bit. I just know that wasn't the style at the time. Typically you made like the lead character do all that cool stuff, but we get a bit of that variety here. Uhura being the one to bring up the it is weird they're taking a brain, and then Chekhov and Sulu both making cases for the planets they think they should go to. Shall we move on to Kirk decides to go to the 6th planet, so they beam down to the ice world, where they encounter some big cavemen who ambush them.
The boots
really
with the
tall.
fur.
Yeah, Taylor likes to point out he's got the boots with the fur.
Because it's warmer. Except the fur would be better served on the inside of the boot instead of the outside.
Yeah, it's
Well,
fashionable. It's caveman fashion.
The Morg are pretty dumb, it seems. Like, as dumb as they make the eye Morg, I think it seems to be true of this species also, that the men are dumber than the women. I think that's true here on Earth. So Sigma Draconis 6 seems to be not too different as far as that goes. But
Instead of like suns out, guns out, it's like ice out, thighs out. And there's like no fur, or there's nothing covering their legs. I'm like, are you?
they don't understand insulation. It's too big of a concept for them to grapple.
Like, he looks so cold.
Yeah, he was probably sweltering.
What's kind of funny to me in the dialogue is when Kirk stuns one of these guys and they kind of interrogate him to get some exposition. But he tells Kirk that, oh, you're small, like the givers of pain and delight. So in other words, he's like saying like, oh, you're small, like a woman. Like, why do you look so womanly?
That was actually something
no,
I
I
was
didn't
confused about in this episode. I was confused, like, is the universal translator like not translate Morg and I Morg into men and women? Like, I felt like that would be like a translation thing, but I wasn't sure.
Well, I guess the Morg don't use the Morg and I Morg terms. They just say there's us, and then there's the givers of pain and delight. So it's like he didn't even have like the concept of a woman in his mind to like translate to. It was just like the givers of pain and delight, which this part of the episode, it doesn't age particularly well, like, looking at gender as like, like these two binary things, but it does raise, some interesting, sci-fi concepts about, what if a society was divided like this. And, in a lot of ways there are kind of like these cultural divides that do try to throw everyone into either one of these two categories, and then you're expected to live a certain way. So there is like some interesting questions, being posed by this episode. I still don't think we're at the point where it goes off the rails, but Brandy, what were you saying a moment ago?
I don't remember.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. I just, I wonder where they found that many tall guys, and also, they could have done a little bit better with the hair and beards. I mean, it just seems like they're just stuck on any which way a bit. So it's nice that this one guy gets the lines, but yeah, there's a lot of things about that I'm like, how dumb are you? And it's not actually even a matter of being dumb. It's a matter of being uneducated, which is not the same thing, because they don't know what they don't know. So basically, they're on the level of children who have no education and no way to get education, and so they just keep being like this. There's no way out of it for them yet.
You know, there is another episode that you just made me think of, and I can't remember which. I believe it was a TOS or TNG episode where the men and the women were separate and they didn't know like what love was or what like human physical intimacy was. And that kind of reminds me of this, because I'm like, how are there even morgues and iMorgues? Like, what is the reproduction like on this planet if they don't even like interact?
Well, I think that's part of like the givers of pain and delight. So I think like the iMorgue must like use some of their enslaved morgue for pleasure and delightful purposes that result in offspring.
Well, yeah, because they got at least a couple of them underground. So, ooh, yeah, that's probably how they. But then, if they return to the surface, I know that's a big plot hole for me.
Yeah, it is. And I kind of don't want that to be developed. I don't need to know more. It sounds like something we should have probably not had in this episode, but
I think it's funny to see like his reaction. This caveman is so terrified of these women, of the givers of pain and delight, that when Chekhov is like, oh, I found like these huge underground structures, this way, and there it turns out there's like that entrance, of course, in a cave, because this is Star Trek, where we go to caves almost every episode. But this guy like freaks out, he runs away, he's so terrified of these women, and it's kind of later when we see Kara, the iMorgue, forced into the teacher to receive that knowledge. Like, she's scared to receive information. Like, these people are like so scared of things that would normally be like normal aspects of life.
Yeah, that's the thing, is like every humanoid creature on this planet is stuck in child mind. And yeah, there's the whole teacher thing where they can gain knowledge, but it doesn't last. And so it's almost like they never even remember that happened, because their brains just aren't developed enough to handle it, or their memory centers aren't developed enough, or it's just it's a frustrating thing, because you gotta wonder, how did this even start? We never get an answer to that. Why did it start? And why can't they turn it off? Those are questions I have.
The writing of this episode, it is a bit lazy in that it recycles some concepts we've seen in Star Trek before. There's a lot in here from the Apple, which, Taylor, I don't know if that's the TOS episode with the orange-skinned people involved. They're the ones, like, they didn't have, like, any concept of intimacy until, like, Kirk is like, well, you'll figure it out. But yeah, it borrows a lot from that. But yeah, we don't really. It's also a bit like the Telosians from the Cage or the Menagerie, of how like they had like this advanced society, but they've regressed by like trying to. I guess it's implied that they automate everything by having like one central controller brain that maintains their city underground. But again, like Brandy was just saying, they also like don't really like explain a lot of the stuff or flesh it out. So I think this was a script that they were just like, we gotta hurry up and get like the next one shooting. So just get this, just make this the script shootable and let's shoot it and move on to the next one. Kind of a typical season 3 thing. Also, like the season 3, budget cuts with you might not have like the best makeup and fake beards and hair on your cavemen though.
Mm. It was basically like shoot first, ask questions later.
I mean, that is how Kirk reacts to Luma when they see the next iMorg they encounter. Getting to that, I love that like the bait in the cave to lure in the morgue to the iMorg, it was like some axes and some loaves of bread. So it's like, oh yeah, if I was a caveman, I'd think, oh, this is like the best day ever. Look, I got a new axe, I got some bread. This is cool. I don't have to go like fight a mammoth with my bare hands.
Yeah, it's all just a bunch of weird stuff, and it's okay. I know the period of time this was made in. I know what television shows were like then. Especially science fiction shows tended to be a bit campy sometimes.
Yeah.
And Star Trek gets into that a bit. Not every episode, but it does happen from time to time. So it's just kind of just this big question mark as to why all of this started and what happened after they removed Spock's brain. We don't get any resolution there. It's like, now your controller's gone. Bye! What?
Yeah, like, do they go, like, steal another Vulcan brain? Or, like, yeah, what happens next?
There's
again,
no resolution there. Just left hanging.
But by that point, the episode had already kind of gone bonkers.
Yes, that's true.
So, but here though, I still think it's playing things, fairly like straightforward. Things are still pretty serious when Kirk at the cave entrance, he's like, okay, we're going to split up into 2. Chekhov, you stay up here with the security guards, and they just, I guess, roast marshmallows by a glowing rock. These red shirts, they get off pretty easy in this episode. They don't have anything to do, just hang out outside and shoot the shit with Chekhov. But the moment that the episode, I think, when it becomes a comedy is when McCoy beams down with remote control Spock. And we get like that crazy zoom in on Spock's face and that clickety sound effect that Brandy was mentioning. And Leonard Nimoy using all of his brilliant acting skills to do the most ridiculous stuff ever and just be this controlled zombie, and DeForest Kelly trying to... How do I play this? How do I play like I'm controlling a man, which is like this little box in my hand with these painted buttons on it? But like they're trying so hard to sell this, and then Shatner and Doohan having to react to it. But what do y'all think of this moment when Spock and McCoy beam down?
Well, it's billed as this dun 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 sort of thing.
Yeah, I think it was an act break, commercial break moment. So they wanted to make sure you didn't change the channel, I guess, during the commercials.
I guess. But that would be hard to do because, you'd have to go up to the actual TV to change the channel.
Yeah, so, okay, it's not worth getting up for. This episode's getting a little weird, but it's not worth getting up from my chair just yet.
Yeah, it's one of those things. Well, again, it's just like, why the jumpsuit? Really? I mean, sure, of course, Chapel would want to undress him, but that's not just why. It's an unnecessary step, completely unnecessary. Because
the wardrobe department had this left over from season 1, and they knew that it fitted Nimoy. But I guess just to remind you, just have more of a visual reminder that like this is not normal Spock. But yeah, it is kind of a weird choice. Like they could have done all of this stuff, have the apparatus on his head, and just have him in his normal Starfleet uniform.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's also a little reminiscent of like scrubs or something that you would wear like if you were in surgery. So it might be like trying to toggle that switch in the watcher's brain is like y'all said, like this isn't actually Spock, but also this is kind of like surgical in some way. Like it kind of gives Scrubs to me. I don't know if that makes sense.
They just had him like dressed in this while they were performing the I don't know, whatever surgery or whatever they had to do to install this.
And like McCoy knows that he's gonna have to put the brain back somehow. Like maybe he's like, oh, we can like easily take this jumper off or something. I don't really know. Like it can go down instead of over his head. I don't know what the thought process is there, but maybe it's something like that. I'm trying to be forgiving.
I would actually go with you on that, except for the mock turtleneck underneath, because that is going to have to come off over the head.
That's true. They'll just have to unless it's cut it off.
Yeah, it's just weird to me, and I don't know. It just makes no sense.
And because also funny. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
It's just the whole thing on his head it's obvious. It's obvious what's going on here. I mean, they give you all the visuals that you need. They didn't need to put him in a different outfit.
Yeah.
In the live audience, Salon Trek says, "My headcanon will always be that McCoy didn't need to remote control him. They could have put him in a chair, but Bones was like, nah, I'm gonna drive this green-blooded hobgoblin around for fun." So maybe that is what's going on there. This is like you have him in a convenient situation where he can't like argue back. So McCoy is milking this.
Well, I think the reason for this is actually Scotty and not McCoy, is because Kirk asked McCoy and Scotty to bring Spock. And I think McCoy maybe would have put him in a wheelchair, but I think Scotty was like, you know what would be great? This act of engineering that we could just like remote control him. Wouldn't that be fun? So they like worked together to like make this version of mobile Spock instead of using something super easy. So I don't know. I'm thinking it was like one of Scotty's like little dream projects. It was like, oh yeah, I could just like have a remote control Spock. That sounds hilarious.
Yeah, just do a thing because you can, but not because you need to.
Yeah. But I feel like if Kirk was just like, hey, McCoy, bring Spock to the planet, it would never have been this elaborate.
Commodore Trev in the live audience says, Nimoy looks hot in the jumpsuit. I agree with Jadzia. Spock greater than Kirk on the hotness scale. So
Agree. Agree completely. Was never a Kirk fan. Sorry, Shatner. It was Spock all the way for this girl.
That's a pretty popular opinion out there. So let's get into the journey underground, the surprise elevator drop in the cave. That's a fun line from McCoy about call Chekhov and tell him to send my stomach down. But this is, Scotty is not only, I guess having fun building remote control Vulcans, but he's also, excited about like, oh, this could be where the ion power is coming from that we detected. And then they encounter the Imorg Luma, who they know their procedure now that they could like knock them out with a little wrist thing that they have, that the Imorg have on their arms. So immediately, as soon as they see her, I love this, but Kirk stuns her with his phaser. Because I'm always like, in Star Trek, there's so many opportunities, and I'm like, the characters should just stun first, ask questions later. Like, you have a totally harmless way of like making this person take a nap, and then they're going to be easier to deal with later, So when in doubt, stun, I say. This is a good example of that.
Agree,
what do y'all 100%.
Think? Yeah, I think he could have done it a bit faster. It's just kind of like they stare at each other for a few seconds, and I'm like, get your phaser out! What's wrong with you? But just make sure that it's not flicked to kill, because that's the only two settings they have is stun and kill in this era.
Yeah, so pretty big distinction there. You don't want to mess that one up like Mariner did that one time when she was shooting at the force field and didn't realize it was set to kill instead of stun, but they were just testing the force field out on the brig. But this is when we get like the conversation with Luma when they start questioning her. We kind of learn, the cavemen on top of the planet, they're pretty dumb. This is the first time we find out that the women underground, they might be a little smarter, but not much smarter. When they're talking to her, and McCoy says she has the brain of a child.
Yeah, this is one of those tropes I highly dislike. We just recently watched Wizard of Oz, and I'm so sorry that I'm bringing this up, but one of my icks with that movie is that Judy Garland is like kind of dressed to be older, but she acts so innocent and young and naive and childlike. And so I think that's kind of what's happening here, but more extreme, obviously, where we have like these kind of sexualized women, right? And then they're very childlike in their mentality. And I think that's probably one of my least favorite tropes. So
yeah, they're both
definitely a lot of it
sexualized,
and
and infantilized at the same time. Yeah, that's what we were talking about.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so that hasn't aged all that well. But it does, kind of further the mystery of like, how could someone come from this planet, have this super advanced ship, be capable of knocking us all out, be capable of doing the most brilliant brain surgery procedure that Dr. McCoy has ever heard of, and then we come here and everyone is a moron. Everyone talks like they're a little kid. But it is hard to take seriously at this point because you have like the remote control Spock, running around with the clickety sound effect, and then this is when Kirk, for some reason, plot convenience, but he tells Scotty, see what you can pick up on the communicator, and we get Nimoy's voice coming in on the communicator. So Spock is actually kind of in this episode a lot, but like all the Spockness is like voice only, and then all of like the Nimoy on screen is like not really Spock. He's just more of a prop walking around. But it's kind of fun to have this detached, Spock voice contributing to the story, guiding them, helping them problem solve. I thought that was kind of neat.
I really like when he calls Kirk and he's like, oh, this is a pleasurable experience to hear your voice. I was like, mm-hmm.
Yeah, they take the time to have like Spock recognize all their voices, like, and Dr. McCoy as well, and Engineer Scott. It's like, glad you're enjoying this so much, Spock. We're all kind of freaked out.
He's so sassy, like on that phone, like on his dialogue. Like it's just straight up sassy Spock for the rest of the episode. Like I feel like he's so over it and he's just committed to all of this funk. He's like, you know what? I guess I'll just have fun with this. Like, whatever.
Yeah. Well, I mean,
he's like, what are you gonna do? Unplug me?
Yeah, right. His body has the easiest job. Just stand there. Just stand there, move, stand there, move, sit down here. The same facial expression he has, doesn't have to do really any acting. Just be a blank slate is all he needs to do.
I heard in an interview Nimoy talk about this episode, and he says that was actually, kind of hard. He was already used to playing things, so I think the term he says is like keeping everything so cool as Spock, and it's like, how do I get even cooler to be this brain dead Spock?
Interesting. Hadn't thought about that.
I feel like a guy like Doug Jones or someone who has like a lot of like mime training, really good at like movement acting. I think that it might be interesting to see them play like a brain dead remote controlled man. I think it's just funny that Nimoy is so good at being just like, super stoic, just straight faced, while his companions might be getting, knocked out or like tortured with the pain belts and stuff. And then it'll cut to Nimoy just with like that blank reaction on his face. To me, that really adds to the comedy and the fun of watching this episode.
Yeah, it's like a little deadpan.
Yeah, it's like not much different from Spock with his brain, really.
But even like Spock with the brain, you would still get like the pain when he's like mind melding with the Horta, and like he would still occasionally like react, and then here it's just like absolute zero, nothing, nada. The first time we really see that is when they're going through the underground facility with Luma, and then they encounter the brain thief from the opening, the Imorg Kara. Turns out she's the high priestess in charge, even though she's not really much brighter than Luma or anyone else on this planet, it seems. But she activates the knockout field, and everyone collapses except for brain dead Spock. Then we have the landing party captured, and we get some more exposition. But I really love the transition to when it cuts to the room where they're all imprisoned in, and now they have like the pain belts on, and we see Luma discussing the events of the episode to some other iMorg, and it's totally silent. It's like Shatner doing his captain's log thing to like catch up the audience who might have just now tuned in to the right station to watch this on NBC. But we see Luma like acting out, like doing the gesture of like someone holding up a gun and then like putting her hand over her head, like show like, and then like I passed out from the stun of the guns. I don't know. That's like so funny. It's like it's like cute and dumb and weird. But it's very much on theme for this episode.
Yeah, I've actually forgotten about that, and I watched this just last night. but because sometimes you can watch an episode a million times, and then you watch it again, and you notice something you've never noticed before. That happens to me all the time with Trek, all the time, even with the original series. And yeah, thanks for bringing that up, because I remember watching that, but not really thinking about what they were doing. So, but the more they spoke, I was just like, oh, these are basically just childlike brains in grown-up bodies in really ridiculous outfits that how in the hell do they get them on with this little brain power as they seem to?
Yeah, like they're smart enough to like manage these complicated outfits, and they like all their like hair and makeup look good.
It's weird.
It's also
pretty sure that the top is connected to the boots.
Yes,
like
exactly.
I'm pretty sure that like it's one giant strip that connects to the boot and goes crossbody, and then the other boot has the other giant strip that goes to the other crossbody, and then they put a skirt on top of that. So it's very elaborate. And I also think it gives Power Rangers a little bit, like they all have like their own color coded like outfits, and I think that's so cute and hilarious. And I love that like when I first watched this, I was like the purple one and the yellow one and the green one. And now like, I don't think I even noticed until the third time we rewatched this that they had names, because I just was mentally color coding them. So it kind of works, but it was,
Well, and it's weird because it's like, where did they get these extravagant and complicated outfits? Because the guys are still like in furs and stuff. Do they have a replicator? And someone has to go use the teacher when they need new clothes. I mean, what?
Yeah, maybe the controller is like printing out clothes for them. But you got to figure like, okay, the last brain that they had controlling them had some interesting fashion taste. If this is what like that brain was making all the iMorg wear. And it's also fun in the scene that you see they have some of their morgue enslaved servants with equipped with pain belts to do all their dirty work, like guarding the landing party that's captured. But this is where we see a very different Kara than at the beginning of the episode, where the beginning where she is comes off as a bit creepy and competent, and then here we get like the famous brain and brain. What is brain?
Yeah,
I think it's kind of funny that they iMorgs put a belt on Spock too. Like he's just like out of it and like isn't affected by the belt like at all. And like they just still have one on him. And I think that's really hilarious. And I also think they kind of look like sliced olives. And it was really hard for me to like get past that. Like if you took an olive and took a cross section of it, like that's what the belt looks like. And
right, that middle part with like the green circle with the red dot in the middle. I never thought of that before, but now I'll probably never not think of that.
Can't unsee like martini belts. Just, like...
So we have
test olives, so it being related to pain is fine with me.
Yeah, but it's so funny to think about what you were mentioning, Taylor, with the pain belt on Spock, because then whenever they're like using the pain belts to like zap them, that like Spock's body is also getting fried with pain electricity or whatever it is, but it's just no reaction. It's like, it's probably unhealthy to do to someone, to be honest. But that Vulcan physique, though, I guess it can take it.
Yeah, incredible Vulcan physique.
One thing I didn't like in this scene is when Kirk and McCoy and Scotty are asking like who's in charge and who's the leader, who's the manager, who built the machines, and then they keep using the pronouns he, him, and like they're just assuming that it's a man.
Yeah, clearly there's got to be a man in charge of all this somewhere, right? Can we talk to this guy?
That aged poorly.
Yeah, it was Scotty points out, he says something like, yeah, these women are, they're too dumb to build a facility like this. But interestingly, this is not the most sexist Scotty is in the original series. You still have, Wolf in the Fold. But they also talk about the aspects of delight, with the givers of pain and delight, and Kirk commenting on noticing the delightful aspects.
Gross.
Yeah.
What I also think is not particularly great dialogue is, it's kind of unclever. They're trying to get to their equipment, the communicators and tricorders and whatnot, and one of the iMorg guards is keeping them from it, and then it's Kirk does the goofy, well, this fellow is keeping us from our property. What are we going to do about that to just instigate the action beat of them, conveniently being able to beat up all these strong cavemen dudes. But that's another thing that's pretty common in television, but it seems to happen in Star Trek a extra lot, and especially in the original series, is that sometimes it's just convenient for your heroes to be able to punch out the antagonist and move on to the next part of the plot. So that's what happens here. But this fight is also funny to watch because as everyone is, getting thrown around and punching the Morg guards, you have Nimoy sitting at the table trying his hardest to do absolutely nothing. And he's so good at it, and it cracks me up every time.
I just really commend these actors for not... I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of outtakes of them laughing and stuff, but I'm impressed that they got this many shots enough to make an episode without them cracking at all. Because, how sometimes they'll, pan off because someone broke scene? And, I feel like all of these shots, they're all deadpan and they commit. And, I didn't catch a single time where someone was, out of character or broke face or whatever. So I'm impressed by that because it's pretty silly. There's some funny scenes that he's having to be stoic,
They're professionals. They were able to at least, if not get it right on the first take, then do enough takes to get it right. But when they're able to make their escape, they're able to get in communication with Spock's voice again, and he guides them to where his brain is being stored. And this is where we get kind of our boss fight, our final confrontation with High Priestess Kara, who uses the pain belts on them. But this is what I was talking about earlier, how it is kind of annoying in that 60s style that they always have to give Kirk all of the great moments, all the hero moments, and maybe this was part of Shatner asking for this stuff, but he's the one who is able to get the remote control from McCoy and guide remote control Spock and control him to be able to press the button on Kara's wrist device to make the pain belts release. Which seems like kind of a very complicated, nuanced thing to do with a controller that only has maybe at most 4 or 5 buttons on it. But Kirk is so damn good, he was able to do it.
You mean Scotty and McCoy were so dang good at setting up those buttons? They had a retrieval button push setting programmed for one of those buttons of the 4. So it was thinking ahead.
They're like the IT professionals that do all the hard work, so that the moron manager can be like, oh, I just have to press a button and then this happens. Yeah. Cool, good for me.
Yeah, that sounds like every IT department. Just people wanting the impossible. I'm just going with they press the button with different pressure or a different amount of times in order to get, okay, so you have to click this one twice to make him raise his arms, right? Okay, so, and then you have to do this one to make him close his hands, but you got to click that one 3 times.
Yeah, that must have been a long conversation off screen.
Yeah.
But Taylor, I remember you also pointing out some of the dialogue here when they're talking to the voice of Spock about trying to, someone's going to have to try to install his brain back in his body.
Yeah, I love the line that Spock, he's all sassy and it's like, oh, I would trust the doctor to remove a splinter or to lance a boil, but to replace my brain, no. And I was just like, man, like the banter between McCoy and Spock is just continuous forever. Like I love that. Like it's just funny.
Yeah. I the whole thing, okay, a thing that partially bothers me about this scene in general is them manhandling her into the teacher.
Oh yeah.
Didn't like that. Didn't like that at all.
Yeah, the visuals of that don't look great.
No.
But the after they do force her through that, they're able to have a conversation with, like, I don't know, with, like, they get like an adult in the room, when they talk to, like, smart Kara, who's been boosted by the teacher. And I think this is kind of unnecessary, but just to throw in, like, some more melodrama, there's that moment where she pulls out the phaser on Kirk. And I'm glad it's in here because it kind of adds to the comedy. You kind of need, like, something else goofy in this episode to make it stay in that comedy mode. But I think what they were actually thinking in the writing of this is like, okay, we need something else here to kind of, like, escalate the stakes, or something, melodramatic to happen before a commercial break. We'll have her pull a phaser on Kirk, but then, like, well, shit, how do we get them out of this? Oh, I don't know. We don't have time to think of anything clever. We'll just have, like, Scotty just do, like, a weird groan to distract her long enough for Kirk to slap it out of her hands. But I think this is always, like, anytime I show this episode to someone, they always, like, laugh out loud at this. But what do y'all think?
Yeah, this part is definitely really funny, and I think unnecessary, honestly. Like I don't think that it was in there for any reason except to be comedic, like you're saying.
No, it was not intentionally comedic. They didn't.
I know,
They were.
but it only comes across that way. Like I feel like
Yeah.
it's really hard to read it any other way with everything.
No, but, like, a happy accident. It's like, okay, like, this keeps the comedy going. So
Yeah, but it's like almost comic relief after literally forcing her into the thinker thing, the brain educator. What is that?
the great teacher.
Of all the ancient knowledge or whatever.
Yes.
I called it the mind porcupine in my notes. It's very pokey.
It actually reminds me of a 1940s hot roller machine. Because that used to be the way it was. They would put these women in all of these rollers, and there would be these cords going up to the top of it.
Looked like that.
Yeah, that's the first thing I thought of, and I thought, painful. But yeah,
I also. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I also hate the whole knocking the phaser out of her hand, tricking her, because now she's got knowledge, but she's still not good enough because she's just a woman.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I want to like echo basically everything you just said about the whole physical grabbing to also her phaser being knocked out of her hands so easily. But I do want to point out that Kirk was very physically grabbing with the Morgue caveman too. And like I feel like he was just very aggressive this whole episode with the Morgue and the iMorgue. But even I think it's even harder to watch like how aggressive he is with Kara, just because she's screaming no so much, and like she doesn't want to be punished and doesn't want to receive this knowledge, and it's so non-consensual and really hard to watch as a woman. So yeah, I feel exactly what you're talking about with that.
Yeah, almost a bit like Spock and Valeris at Star Trek 6. Just kind of doesn't look great to see but the way that I think maybe if you were gonna handle this now, if this episode was being written today, if they were doing this story on like Strange New Worlds or something, like you could do so much cool stuff with the great teacher of all ancient knowledge. If you wanted to have some cool additional confrontation here, you could just do like a Matrix thing where it's like, oh, that thing like downloaded kung fu into my brain. I'm gonna have like this big, action fight with all of you, and like it takes like all of them to like to stop her, or like something like that. They could do some cool choreography and stuff these days, but unfortunately, you're not gonna find the greatest scripting, the greatest plots in season 3 of of the original series. There's an interesting line from Smart Kara though about like she doesn't accept that this is like the death of Spock. Like, what do you mean? He's gonna live for 10,000 years as our controller. Like, who cares about his body dying? And she actually says, I wrote this down, but she says, why do you not understand that the need of my people for the controller is greater than your need for your friend? We were talking about, when you see things in an episode that never stood out to you before. This never stood out to me before, but that is so much, very much a version of the goods of the many outweigh the goods of the few, It's very on brand for Spock.
I was actually going to bring that up as well. I put that in my notes as it was reworded as needs of the many outweigh, or the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the one. And I thought that was such an interesting thing to include in this episode where Spock honestly hasn't even asked to be like reconnected or anything. Like they're just doing all this under the assumption and that, they want their friend back and stuff. But like, honestly, I can't remember now, but do they ever really ask like, Spock, do you want to be returned to your body, or you want to be this like ultimate computer for 10,000 years?
That's a great point, because I could totally see Spock being like, "Oh, this is actually a great use of my superior intellect. I could stay here and manage this society." You know what? When before she becomes Smart Kara, when she's still dumb Kara, but she says, something like the controller he's young and powerful, he's perfect, and then Spock says, "How very flattering." So you can kind of see how he would enjoy that. I don't know. 10,000 years is a long commitment, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, when you think about the Katra, though, I mean, you could go on even longer than 10,000 years if you could, figure out someone to carry you around that wouldn't die immediately. Yeah,
maybe he could do like his 10,000 year tour of duty on Sigma Draconis 6, and then some Vulcan just come like grab his Katra out of the box that his brain is in, and then like traditional whatever Vulcan existence is post Katra, post death stuff. But yeah, I never thought of that, but that is a good point also, Taylor, about like, they don't really like ask Spock or get no one checks with him for consent for any of this.
Yeah, he doesn't want his brain taken. He doesn't get brain going back in the body. Like, no, we don't care what Spock thinks. We're just gonna do what we want with your brain. The whole episode.
His brain is just along for the ride, wherever other people decide it's going to end up.
Yeah, I kind of look at it a different way, because she says, why is your need greater than mine, and and my people. And the thing is that how many people do we actually see on this planet? Like maybe 10 or 11. They don't really give us a very good image of how many people they're actually talking about. It could be only these people, but imagine then all of the things that Spock can do as a science officer on the Enterprise in the future. Mm-hmm. He could save billions of people.
Right, and the Romulans would never be reintegrated with the Vulcans.
Oh they established that on, speaking of Strange New Worlds, in the season 1 finale, though, they say that like, without Spock there's never hope for peace with the Romulans. So he's actually like super important to the timeline that he doesn't stay on Sigma Draconis 6.
Yeah. And even if I didn't have that knowledge of future episodes, that was something that I still thought about when I was a kid and watching Star Trek after school, and just thought, but all these other things that he could do because he's on the Enterprise and because he's really smart. And so it's just, they can figure themselves out. He's probably going to do great things. And he does.
Well, Dr. McCoy ends up performing the procedure to reinstall the brain, but after Kara refuses to do it, they stick McCoy through the great teacher, and he gets a knowledge upgrade, and then he really starts singing a different tune. Instead of being like, "Oh, it's impossible to do this type of procedure," he's like, "Oh, it's so easy, even a child could do it." And another convenience of like the time periods is here. It's like, oh, I get to keep this knowledge for 3 hours. That's the perfect amount of time to do this surgery. Even though it turns out to be not quite enough time, but I do like the idea of Spock having to help guide McCoy through finishing the surgery by having his vocal cords connected first. I just think it's so damn odd that Scotty is like, that great teacher machine is really cool. I'd love a crack at using that. It's like, why don't they just let Scotty do that and then he can like tag out McCoy and finish the surgery, you know? Like he's basically volunteering.
Yeah, maybe he doesn't have the same level of manual dexterity that the doctor does.
He doesn't have like the surgeon hands. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. You know, he's used to like handling machines, not like delicate brain tissue and stuff.
And
so
ganglia.
Yeah, Brandy, that's my headcanon now. What were you saying, Taylor?
Oh, sorry. I really like how Kara refuses and holds her ground here and forces them to like use the teacher and like figure out a plan B. Because like the whole time, like even like when we're in the med bay, right, when Spock's brain is taken, Kirk says like, well, we'll have those same people who took their brain put it back, you know? And I think it was cool that Kara stood her ground and they just basically had to like download it into McCoy's brain. But I like that he was excited to do it too. He was like, think of the knowledge, like if I could retain it all, because we don't know if like it'll actually go away in my alien body for, if I'll be able to retain it longer or shorter. They didn't know for sure like how it would affect him as a human. But I did like that, that's kind of like that doctor. We kind of get that in TNG, I think, with Dr. Pulaski, where she's always kind of putting herself on the line for her patients and stuff. It kind of felt like that with McCoy here.
Yeah, totally. And I also love DeForest Kelly's just insane expressions. You got like sweaty McCoy, like so working sweaty, like a madman to perform the surgery and finish in time. But DeForest Kelly sells the hell out of it.
The eyes, the crazy eyes.
Yeah, and his eyebrows always shooting up.
That's my mad scientist eyes right there. Right there.
And when Spock starts talking, his voice is real raspy at first. And it also just cracks me up, just him kind of like testing out he's doing like, oh, that's better, getting his voice like back in tune. But when he starts off kind of raspy, it's like, oh, that's kind of what like old Leonard Nimoy sounds like. And like, Star Trek 2009 after all the more cigarettes he smoked between 1968 and 2009, but you get kind of a foreshadow of what his voice will sound like eventually. But yeah, it's like he doesn't let McCoy have like this big victory over him. He can't be like, I can't just let Dr. McCoy be like, I saved your life with this, impressive medical miracle brain transplant. It's like, oh, you couldn't have done it without me guiding you through the final stretch.
It's true though.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a fun idea for you to cap off this silly episode. But there was actually the producer Bob Justman on the original series. I think he says that this was his idea to have Spock coach McCoy through the end of it. I was actually reading that in one of the early Gene Coon drafts of the script, it was actually going to be that Dr. McCoy makes some mistakes at the end, and as a result, he's reversed some nerve endings, and now whenever Spock is supposed to sneeze, instead he laughs. So he has some wires crossed, but his Vulcan mental disciplines are so great that he can mentally recorrect those pathways. So that was I guess was like the alternate ending before they came up with this idea.
That's interesting.
Yeah, there is one thing about this scene towards the end of it that I didn't notice before, and I've seen this episode a lot. But at the very end, when McCoy's basically very relieved, he mispronounces the word ganglia, and he says gangala.
Oh, I didn't notice that either. But when he does talk about joining the Gangula, it always reminds me of Deep Space Nine and Dr. Bashir talking about when he mistook a pre-ganglionic fiber for a post-ganglionic nerve during the oral exams of his medical finals. Because they mentioned that in Deep Space Nine like 47 times. So
Yeah, well, there's lots of things that Shatner can't pronounce. So
that's very true. Yeah, or he finds his own unique ways, but.
I also really liked in the scene that he gave the doctor reassurance. He kept saying, "Very good, doctor," or like, "That's correct, doctor." And like, I actually kind of liked that because it reminded me of like when I was working as an engineer and having like a senior engineer with me, like watching me do it first, and they were kind of providing that reassurance as I would like connect cables and stuff. Like literally the same thing that McCoy is doing is like connecting like different nerve endings or whatever, and I was like connecting different like lines, you know. And in the background, I would just have my senior engineer being like, "Very good, keep going," like that is correct. And so I thought the scene was kind of like a little bit silly, but also I liked it because I liked the reassurance that Spock was giving to McCoy because he was so nervous. Like he kept saying, like he was sweating, like y'all said, but he said it's like threading a needle with a sledgehammer.
Oh yeah, that was fun.
It's a very strong image with words, you know. So I really liked that Spock was nice to McCoy in this scene and not necessarily sassy Spock.
But that cool Vulcan, that coolness to be able to be that calm and patient as someone is doing surgery on your brain. That's kind of a trademark Spock. Do you have any other final thoughts on this episode before we go into the Gorn egg section of the show, where I'm going to point out some Easter eggs, in jokes, and continuity connections?
I have thoughts. One of my favorite things about this episode is once Spock is all back in his body and whatnot, and his brain is back in his body, he becomes excited science officer. Oh my God, he is so excited and he's talking so fast. And, it's just like, it's almost like a little bit of the human side of him is coming to the forefront and fueling this excitement over this discovery of this planet and their society and all of these things. I just love it.
I love that it's like a hyperfixation info dump. Like he's so excited to share what he's learned. And he's just like, "My friends who have cared so much about getting my brain back together, let me tell you this cool thing." And then they all like laugh at him. They're like, "Oh, ho, ho, ha,
Yeah,
ha,
he wants to info dump. He's like in the middle of an info dump.
But yeah, I love that about Spock too. I'm glad that you brought that up.
And we get one of those classic silly TOS endings where everyone just stands around and laughs way too hard and way too long at a joke. But it's a very satisfying way to end an episode, like that old school 60s style. But yeah, and just like the gag of like, of McCoy reacting to like, "Oh, I never should have done it. I never should have reconnected his mouth." And Kirk's response is, "Well, that's the risk that we took." But that kind of goes into like the risk is our business thing. That comes up when McCoy is like, "It would be such a risk for me to try to use this great teacher machine, but I'm gonna do it." So you get some risk is our business vibes in this episode as well. And in the live audience, I see Rachel says, "I still say him getting his brain messed with is why he keeps forgetting about his siblings." So yeah, maybe this is why no mentions of Cybok and Michael Burnham.
Well, here's my thought on that. Remember in season 1 when Spock's parents first come aboard the Enterprise and he's just like, "Oh yeah, these are my parents." And everybody's like, "What?" I mean, like, they're just so shocked because he never talks about his family. Spock never talking about his family, never talking about Cybok, never talking about Michael Burnham is the most Spock canon thing there is.
I agree,
That's what he does. He does not talk about his family in any way, shape, or form.
Same thing with T'Pring, and it's funny that like under Pike's command, he invites her on the Enterprise all the time, but under Kirk's command, like no one knew about T'Pring either until like wedding day. So yeah, Spock very private with his family. I do like but his brain does get tampered with a lot also. So he mind melds with weird things. So I think that's kind of fun to think also. But that's all we got on this episode. I'll go ahead and move into the Gorn egg section of the show, where, like I said, I like to point out some of the Easter eggs, in jokes, and continuity connections in the episode that I think are fun to mention. We typically do this when we're talking about new episodes from new shows. So this is the first one we've done in our backtracking retrospectives, but it's fun to kind of connect some of the things in these older episodes to the newer shows. So I'm going to do a bit of that. But just starting off right off the bat, the episode opens with the ion engine ship. And for the people watching this on YouTube, on the left, I have an image of how the ship originally appeared in the episode, and then on the right, I have an image of how it appeared in the remastered version of the episode. But the ion drive ship that is mentioned, we actually encounter a race that uses ion-driven ships again in Star Trek. I was surprised that it's really only one other time it comes up, but it's in the Voyager episode, The Chute, where Tom and Harry are stuck in a prison space station. But that species, the Acritrians, or whatever they're called, they had some cargo ships running on perilithium that used ion drives. So shows up again there. I was surprised that's the only other time we see it, because like I said, that is kind of a real technology to use ion propulsion. I don't know real life science as well as I know Star Trek science, but the idea, I think, when you ionize atoms, they're like charged to where like they no longer have an electron orbiting a nucleus, and then that makes it an ion, and then you can control the path of an ion with electrical currents, and you can project them to like push yourself through space. So I guess like the thing that blew Scotty's mind was someone being able to do that so efficiently that they can like travel faster than light. Seemed like, oh wow, this is some high-tech technology. But also, we talked about how Chapel didn't get any dialogue in this episode, but Majel Barrett did a great stunt. When everyone passes out, we see Nurse Chapel fall to the floor in sickbay, and it was such a good stunt that they used that footage again. We actually see that exact same footage in The Way to Eden, when the space hippies knock out the Enterprise crew. The Sigma Draconis system is mentioned again in Star Trek. I was kind of shocked to see when it was actually mentioned in dialogue. It does show up on screen in some star charts in various shows, and Mike Okuda actually snuck in some mentions of it on some Okudagram screens in The Next Generation. But the next time after this episode that characters actually mention in dialogue the Sigma Draconis system is in Star Trek Discovery Season 3 in the episode Die Trying. It's in the scene when they first arrive at Starfleet HQ and they meet Admiral Vance for the first time. An officer approaches Vance and says, Sir, the Cuyahoga is reporting that Orion and Andorian vessels in the Sigma Draconis system. And then this is when Vance says, Osira's been becoming more brazen by the day. But so that's the very first time we ever hear mention of Osira. They're talking about the Sigma Draconis system. So the Spock's brain system, that's where the Emerald Chain is causing trouble in the 32nd century. That's the very first time they ever say the word Osira. So that surprised me. Crazy.
I didn't even connect those. I mean, I thought Sigma Draconis, that sounds familiar, but then I just forgot about it. So yeah. Dialogue's happening. I got to pay attention.
Yeah, it sounds like I could be like a real star or like a made-up star for Star Trek either. So Other fun thing in this episode, when they beam down to Sigma Draconis 6, Kirk says suit temperatures to 72. Bugs me that they use Fahrenheit in this episode, by the way. Like Chekhov talking about like high temperature of 40. It's like, come on, y'all. You should be using Celsius in the 23rd century. But that idea that they can control the temperature of their uniforms, that is not really mentioned very much in Star Trek. They seem to often forget that, depending on the episode or the show, but there is a line from Worf in the Ryza episode of Deep Space Nine, Let He Who Is Without Sin. Worf says, Starfleet uniforms are designed for comfort even in the most extreme environments. So that kind of ties into the being able to control your temperature.
Yeah, and by the way, in the 21st century, we should be using Celsius.
Oh, strong agree. I annoy many of my fellow Americans by using Celsius temperatures sometimes, but people overseas always know what I'm talking about. So
yeah, Fahrenheit makes no sense. It makes 0 sense. With Celsius, 0 is freezing, 100 is boiling. Simple.
But to be fair, there's a lot of things about our country and our choices that don't make sense. So.
Yeah. And then, but with Fahrenheit, it's like 32 is freezing. And then like 212 is boiling. What? Why? Just do something that makes sense.
It makes about as much sense as that planetary development scale of like, oh, that's 1485. Oh, that's 2030. Just like, yeah, that's random.
You're just throwing years out. You could have just said the 24th century. I mean, just
yeah, and broaden it up a little bit. It doesn't have to be that specific, Kirk.
Yeah.
The idea of controlling this brainless body with a remote control that always the episode of Deep Space Nine, the Magnificent Ferengi, always reminds me of Spock's brain when Nog rigs up Kevin, the Vorta, who they accidentally kill, but they need for the hostage exchange to get Moogie back. They rig him up with a remote control to be driven around like Spock in Spock's brain. So that's cool. Maybe Nog read about this adventure in some Starfleet logs he was studying, and that's what gave him the idea.
Yeah, I'm sure all that stuff got declassified by the time Deep Space Nine came around.
And the coveralls, Brandy, that you kept pointing out that he's wearing the green coveralls, the green jumpsuit that for some reason we believe Nurse Chapel did it, but for some reason someone dressed up Spock in was previously seen in the episode This Side of Paradise. So the wardrobe department clearly kept that in the closet for season 3. And there's some fun stuff with the iMorg computer. It reuses some footage of the cool red and yellow and green streaky lights that we saw in the episode, 2 episodes before this, I believe. But the footage they're actually reusing is footage from the Beta 5 computer in Assignment Earth, which itself borrowed a lot of components and that same style of visuals from the M5 computer in the Ultimate Computer. But we've seen both of these things in Star Trek recently. We saw the Beta 5 computer with those same cool retro 60s green and red streaky lines. We saw that in the recreation of Gary Seven's office that was at Wesley Crusher's Traveler Planet in Prodigy Season 2 and The Devourer of All Things Part 2. And then we saw that same style on lower decks with the Texas-class ships being controlled by Admiral Buenamigo. So it's fun to see that retro stuff come up again in modern Trek, and then go back to watching Spock's brain, and you're like, oh, look, there's a quick shot of the streaky lights on the computer.
Gosh, that episode of Lower Decks, though, man, that is like super violent in the end. It's like, how many people died in that episode? You don't usually see that in
a lot of people die in the Ultimate Computer too. So these streaky lights might mean bad news when you see them. So
yeah, I don't like them. Every time I see them, I think no bad.
Yeah, yeah, that's valid. That's all the Gorn eggs I got for this episode. But we do have some subspace transmissions to read, just some things we've heard back from the audience recently. But I want to ask everyone, y'all heard us talk about Spock's brain for over an hour, so you know what we think about it. But please comment and let us know your thoughts on Spock's brain. Comment and let us know what episode we should do next for our backtracking retrospectives. I'm going to announce next week's episode in a moment. But I definitely want to get some thoughts on Spock's brain to share next week. But right now, we've our last couple of shows. I've been, now that Taylor has seen all of Star Trek, we've been sharing her thoughts. The 2 weeks ago, we did kind of a show just focusing on her reactions to the Berman era of Star Trek, and then last week we had her talk about her thoughts on the modern Star Trek shows, 2017 and onward. So folks can check those out if you want to get more of Taylor's opinions on Star Trek and her first time Trek takes, as we called it. But some comments we received on YouTube. Dave A. Gregory said, so good. This was talking about her reactions to Berman era Trek. But Dave A. Gregory says, so good. This was fun. Sorry I couldn't watch live last night, but I loved getting Taylor's takes on Berman era. Interesting assessment lineup of the movies and of Voyager. Thanks, Tex-Trek. Glad to be a new full Patreon supporter. So Dave A. Gregory, thank you so much for the comment and the view and for supporting on Patreon. We really appreciate it. Chuck A. says, great take on Star Trek, Miss Taylor, and also on this great panel. And Coffee Black Voyager says, always fun seeing a new Trek fan reviewing Berman era Trek. And we also received this question from new viewer TGIF1345. So Taylor, maybe we can answer this for them. But they say, one of these days I'll catch the live stream as you're live, but I'm new, so I haven't gotten there and joining in on the live streams yet. I did have a question for Fathery and Taylor, though. When you did your watch through of the Berman era and it got to having 2 shows on at a time, did you watch them in release order by episode or by season with fitting the movies between seasons? I'm also glad that you like Lower Decks, Taylor, because even though I had a huge problem with the second season of the show, I still like the characters, particularly Mariner and Boimler. I've got a fellow Lower Decks fan, but yeah, Taylor, do you want to talk about how we watched the Berman era episodes when there was a lot of overlap?
Oh man, I sure can try to answer this question, but you definitely know better than me. We definitely bounced around a lot. We went episode by episode release and not season by season release. So we had, at some points, we would do 1 TNG episode and then 1 DS9 episode, or 2 TNGs, 1 DS9, and then eventually sprinkling in Voyager. And then we would also do the movies in release as well between episodes. Is there anything else you want to add to that?
I just wanted to point out how you were frustrated that you were enjoying DS9 so much, and then you didn't like having to bounce around to the other shows. But that kind of makes sense. DS9 has more of like an ongoing story that is like, oh, I got to see what happens next. It's like,
yeah,
I don't have time for Tuvix. I'm trying to watch DS9, so.
Yeah, I definitely struggled bouncing between TNG and DS9 more than when we were bouncing between Voyager and DS9. But yeah, I'm excited to watch DS9 all the way through straight one day, because we definitely had a lot of episodes in between, and it felt like I didn't really get the full arc storyline as seamlessly. So I am excited for a rewatch of DS9 soon.
Yeah, and we'll do that, but hope that answers your question, TGIF1345. But glad to have you on board, and hope you're able to join us in the live stream sometime. Say hi in the chat if you make it. But that is all we got for the show this week. So, Brandy, thank you so very much for joining us. Do you want to let people know where they can find you and get some more podcasting entertainment from you?
You can't find me anywhere. No, I'm kidding. Of course. I'm just so over social media right now, but I do still respond on a couple of places, which are Instagram and Blue Sky. On Instagram, I'm just my name, Branda Jackola. And then on Blue Sky, I'm Brandywine because I got in early enough that I didn't have to put a number after that. So I'm the original Brandywine on Blue Sky, bitches. So you can find me on either of those places. And I do, the only thing I have steadily running right now is my podcast with my husband called Shield Podulation. And each week we randomly choose an episode of Star Trek to watch, or movie. You know, they're all together on a spreadsheet that Dan Gunther very lovingly let us borrow. And and then we just talk about that episode, and we don't do two-parters together. If it comes up as a movie, we watch the whole movie, and we've really been having a great time. The one thing that we don't do is edits, because we hate editing and we're tired of it. So the conversation that you hear is the conversation that we had. There is the only thing we put in is noise reduction, cleaning up long periods of silence, which almost never happens, and then putting intro and outro music in. So, but other than that, that's just the way we talk to each other. So you can find that on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and stuff like that.
That sounds like a lot of fun. I need to check that out. And also, please let Dan know that we would love to have him for one of these backtracking retrospectives. I'd love to talk about a Star Trek episode with him. But folks,
I will send him a message tonight and say, hey.
Folks, let us know what you thought about Spock's brain, and let us know what episode you want us to cover next. But until next week, as always, live long and prosper, y'all.
Wait. You have to tell them what we're doing next week.
Oh, you're right. I didn't say it. It's going to be the TNG Season 1 episode, Heart of Glory.
There we go.
So, it's not one that people talk about very much, but it's like kind of like the first Klingon episode. So,
yes,
but we'll have Dave on board for that. So thank you so much, Taylor. So Heart of Glory next week. And until then, as always, live long and prosper, y'all.
Subscribe to YouTube to watch the Tex-Trek podcast live, or listen to us later on your favorite podcast platform. Follow Stephen Fothery on socials at TXTrek. Thank you and take care.